Are Alabama fans' pets' heads falling off? They might be. Jimmy and I are going to tell you.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me, Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn, and thank you for making us your first listen every day, although that was impossible today because we didn't get to do this until much later in the day than we normally do, but we appreciate the effort from you guys. Jimmy, Scott Huff is leaving the University of Alabama. We talked about this. We touched on it a little bit yesterday. It wasn't official. It is now official. He's going to be with the Seattle Seahawks. I was going to say Supersonics. That would be weird. That would be weird.
But it would be so embarrassing if he left us for the Supersonics, a franchise that doesn't exist anymore. See, that's when our pets' heads would be falling off for sure.
That's right.
When we have coaches leaving for he's going to coach the New Orleans Jazz.
I'm going to coach the Kentucky Colonels. They were in the ABA and they don't exist. Well, still better than being in Tuscaloosa.
The Brooklyn Dodgers.
No, he is going to Seattle Seahawks. Mm-hmm. Frankly, Jimmy, that's one thing. You and I talked about a little bit is that, look, we're going to probably see more of this, more college coaches heading to the pros if they can. It's a good gig. They don't have to recruit. But I think the bottom line is now, what is Alabama going to do? These guys are gone. So what is Alabama going to do? Are they going to raid Missouri staff? That's what a lot of people are saying. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's possible. I'm not ruling it out. I would just caution, I'm not convinced that's going to happen. I do think that it's very possible. I think I would be kind of excited if it's Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinator at Missouri. There'd be reasons for me to be waving the flag about how great that is. But at the same time, a little bit of caution. One is, by the way, there's an $850,000 buyout. So, and that's before you pay him the $2 million a year it's going to take to hire him away. So it would be really pricey. And again, I bring this up to where people are getting frustrated with it, but he's only coached quarterbacks 2 years in his whole life. So it's a little unusual for an Alabama OC QB coach to have such little experience. But hey, he did a great job at Missouri last year. He's coached for DeBoer. He knows the system. This is Kellen Moore's younger brother. And Kellen Moore is a great quarterback and a great NFL QB OC guy. And maybe by osmosis alone, he's, or heredity, I should say, this is the right guy. But $850,000 beyond the $2 million you have to pay a year to get somebody like him. So I'm not sure, but I think I would go so far as to say he's either the early favorite or maybe 1B with Nick Sheridan, the current Alabama tight end coach.
Okay, if it is Nick Sheridan,
mm-hmm.
who's the current tight end coach, as you mentioned, is there reason for optimism, or does it feel like, hey, it was time to promote somebody and I had to get somebody and then there he is? I mean, a little bit like this isn't fair, and I'm not taking a shot at Nick Sheridan because I don't know the answer to this. You would know better than I. But it's a little bit like you're at the bar it's 1:30 in the morning. You're not 100% sure if the person you're trying to hook up with, and I'm trying to stay gender neutral here to not offend anybody in any way, if the person you're looking at, you're like,
probably picked the wrong analogy then if you're trying not to offend people as we're drunk trying to hook up at 1:30 in the morning here.
You're trying to find a new study partner.
Am I at Galette's or Chuck's Fish?
That's another good. All right, you're at the Old Tusk, and it's 1:30. And you think that there might be some better looking potential hookups coming to the bar a little later, but this 1:30 thing is a surefire. Like, I know she'll accept, or he'll accept, or they both accept, or whatever. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. Now I'm all being at the Tusk.
I'm all fascinated with the analogy as opposed to Alabama football at this point. Do I have to hook up with Nick Sheridan? Because I'm passing.
Breaking news on Locked On Bama. Jimmy is in a heated relationship with Nick Sheridan.
Yeah, that analogy just went wacky there. Now, I think here's one thing about Nick Sheridan that's a couple of positives. Number one, he knows the system. And that's great because you don't spend as much time coaching somebody up and teaching them, hey, that the coach has to attend the same install classes that the players do. Number two, he has, I believe, as much or more experience than Kirby Moore coaching quarterbacks and running an offense. I mean, he's not less experienced than Kirby Moore is. And he's here. So there's some pros, but hey, if an Alabama fan doesn't like it and calls it, lazy or some sort of word like that, I mean, I'll get the criticism because I also think this is a very fair thing to say. Nick Sheridan does not have the typical resume of an offensive coordinator that Alabama will hire. It's not the Nick Saban era. We need to get used to that. But Nick Saban hired some OCs with some sexy, and there I go again. I don't know why we can't get away from these analogies, but Nick Saban hired some sexy resumes, didn't he? Lane Kiffin, Sark, a lot of guys like that. Even Brian Dable had worked with the Patriots, and Jim McElwain had been a successful OC at Fresno and Louisville, and I mean, so this wouldn't be a sexy hire for sure. I would tell people though, if it is Nick Sheridan, that don't panic. This is Kalen DeBoer announcing to everyone that Kalen DeBoer is going to run the Alabama offense. And by the way, he would be a great OC to hire. I wish he was out there to hire because Kalen DeBoer hiring Kalen DeBoer sounds right to me. DeBoer has had as much or more success as an OC than Ryan Grubb. So let's keep that in mind about who the head coach is.
All right, a couple of things. First of all, you've already kind of sold me on Nick Sheridan, because if it means Kalen DeBoer is going to be that much more involved, which a lot of people already believed he was going to be pretty involved with Ryan Grubb regardless.
Correct.
So then that makes me feel better. I also had the thought, you know what, Nick Saban sort of had a thing for hiring coaches that maybe were had some kind of sordid past of whatever description. I mean, Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, you talk about Jim McElwain with his shark fetish, all those things. So maybe we just need to wait a couple of days and see if somebody gets in trouble.
That was a Saban thing. I don't know that it'll be a DeBoer thing. And by the way, Coach Mack is a name I've used on BOL a few times, just in the sense, hey, this is just me talking. It's not from inside the program. I would be a fan if they hired Jim McElwain. And they've already hired 2 sitting group of 5 coaches, so it's not crazy to think that they might hire a group of 5 sitting coaches. They know each other. I do know that's true. Jim McElwain's son works for Alabama. Jim has been here in the past and loved being in Tuscaloosa. And it's not his offense. For all the people like, oh, that offense just wasn't – we just ran the ball a lot. It would be Kalen DeBoer's offense. Jim McElwain did what Nick Saban wanted him to do in 2009, 2010, and 2011. If McElwain was hired by DeBoer, he would do what DeBoer wants to do in 2024, which means run the Kalen DeBoer offense, the same offense that we saw last year at Washington. So I wouldn't worry at all about the style of play if Coach Mack came. It's going to be DeBoer's style of play no matter who the OC is.
Yeah, and we hadn't even really talked about offensive line coach. I'm going to tell you, honestly, Jimmy, it's not like there are a lot of people out there who have a hot list of offensive line coaches, right?
Yep. Yeah, somebody would ask me, I wouldn't even know where to start because, and that's one thing about that we do. We do this, me and Luke do this, y'all do this that are listening. Whenever we're like, oh, we need a new offensive line coach, and we think of who that might be, we only think of the guys we know.
Yeah.
What are the names we know? We have to understand that Kalen DeBoer knows not only different coaches, a whole heck of a lot more. His whole life is knowing coaches. His Rolodex, and that's a term from the last century for everyone that's young listening, his Rolodex is massive. Me and Luke, or I should say contact list. His contact list is enormous. Mine and Luke's offensive line coach contact list would be like 3 people. So I don't know, but I do think this. Because DeBoer has extensive experience as an OC QB guy himself, the offensive line hire to me is bigger. It's a bigger and more important because DeBoer's got nothing to do with that. His offensive line guy is going to show up and be an offensive line coach, and DeBoer is going to evaluate him on whether his offensive line's good or not. but he's not going to sit there and micromanage because offensive line is not his thing. DeBoer is going to, in some instance or another, be the OC QB coach, no matter who he hires, because it's his offense and he's an expert in that area. It's like Nick Saban on defense. I don't know what Alabama fans out there think that our defensive coordinators just did whatever the heck they wanted. Nick Saban was always heavily involved in what goes on that side of the ball, whether the coordinator was Kirby or Jeremy or Pete or Tosh or Kevin Steele. Nick was heavily involved because that's his expertise and that's what he likes doing. It'll be just the opposite now with Kalen on the other side of the ball.
All right, Jimmy. When we come back, we're going to talk about the way too early top 25 that you guys over at On3 did. But, you know, if you're looking for an offensive line coach or even an offensive coordinator, one place you could go is LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business or even your big business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, they might not have the time or the resources to hire. You need to post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they're going to apply. And I forgot the overlay, but that's okay. I think Zach told me to quit putting the overlay in later because it's confusing, so I'm not going to do it. LinkedIn, go check them out. LinkedIn Jobs, that is. Okay, so Jimmy, way too early, top 25 from On3.
Yep.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, yeah, I saw it.
Okay.
I haven't memorized it. I don't have it in front of me, but I think Alabama was 5th.
They were. That's what I was going to ask you. Where do you think they put Alabama? And they did put them at 5, and I'm down with that. I understand the ones ahead of them are Georgia at 1, Ohio State at 2, Oregon at 3, Texas at 4, then Ole Miss at 6, Notre Dame at 7, Michigan at 8, Penn State at 9, Missouri at 10, and LSU and Utah round out the top 12. Now, looking very quickly, I guess the Power 5 team, or excuse me, the non-Power 5 team that they think would make it would be SMU. They have them coming in at 25.
Here's a curveball, and here's a curveball, though. SMU, and some people listening know this and some won't because it still is so shocking. SMU is in the ACC.
In the ACC. I just remembered that.
Yeah,
so,
isn't that crazy? Because it's so dumb.
And
by dumb, I mean, it's just sort of shocking.
I just remembered that. It's so dumb, and I wish I didn't remember it. I wish I didn't even know it because that's just dumb. And Cal and Stanford being in the ACC is dumb. That's a whole nother argument. But this top 25, let me tell you, I love these top 25s. I love all this hypothetical stuff. There's some people who don't like all this offseason stuff. I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm going to tell you something, Jimmy. I would put Ohio State at number 1. And before everybody kills me and says, hey, Ryan Day hadn't done it, I get it. And Georgia has done it, I get it. But Ryan Day, he does, first of all, he plays in the Big Ten. It's going to be an easier schedule. Their schedule is not that bad this year. It just isn't. They do have to go to Oregon, I think. Okay, that's going to be tough. That's tough. But, I mean, I think that their schedule is easier than Georgia's. Georgia's got to go to Bama, to Texas. They got to play Florida. They got to go to Ole Miss. I mean, I just named 3 teams that are in the top 6. Georgia has to travel to. And they can't go to 4 of the 6 because they're one of the 6.
Georgia definitely making up for that weak water schedule they had in 2023. It's a little tough on Georgia this fall. And I think it's a tough schedule for virtually everyone in the Big Ten and the SEC. Some will have it harder than others. But to me, there isn't a Big Ten or SEC schedule that's easy. I think they're all really difficult. But one thing about Ohio State, I think I would put Ohio State number 1, Luke. Let's see if you agree with this premise, if you can follow me here. I think Ohio State has the best team this fall, 1 through 22.
Yeah.
In other words, they're starters. Georgia still has the best roster 1 through 85. I think that's
Yeah.
Georgia. Texas would certainly be in the argument for 1 through 22 and 1 through 85. I'm not so sure about this obsession with Oregon that people seem to have. I noticed that FanDuel, and we'll talk about that in the last segment, but FanDuel has Oregon's one-loss total higher than Alabama's. That could be a product of the schedule, could be just ultimate respect for Dylan Gabriel. I don't know, but I like Alabama at 5. I can tell you this. One of the things that I'm enjoying about the DeBoer era in its infancy, Luke, is the channel has changed. And by that, for a while, Alabama was really stuck on the same channel. And by that, I mean, every year in these preseason polls, we were 1 or we were 2. And the one-loss total was 10.5 or 11.5. It was insanely high. And we were 1 or 2, and it was year after year after year. I'm not saying that being 5 is better. In fact, it's not as good, because what that means is this is the rest of the country going, you know what? Alabama's not what they used to be. And I get that. And they're probably, or even largely, correct. But it is interesting. The channel has changed. It is now a different look. We're coming from behind a little bit. And we've even got Ole Miss on our heels. And we've got folks talking, Luke. It used to be, hey, is Alabama the best or second best team in the SEC? Now we'll have people talking, well, Georgia's definitely ahead of Alabama. Texas is ahead of Alabama. Is Ole Miss better than Alabama? Is Missouri better than Alabama? And see, I love this talk, because
I think it's good
don't
for
think any
DeBoer.
of that's. It is good for DeBoer. I don't think any of it's going to prove correct, frankly. I think I'm loving this because I'm feeling that Alabama is underestimated, which is the ultimate channel change here, right? Instead of Alabama being so respected, it's next to impossible to live up to the expectation. Now you've got Alabama like, hey, you know what? We're probably a little better than people think.
Well,
which is fun.
if you're DeBoer, okay. Here's the thing: if you had this team and Nick Saban coaching it, there's no doubt in my mind On3 has Bama probably at number 3. I mean, you're probably not putting them ahead of Georgia and Ohio State, which I get, but you're putting them ahead of Oregon if Nick Saban's coaching, just out of respect to Nick Saban. That would probably be too high. You have Kalen DeBoer, you have all these unknowns. You're putting Alabama at 5, which would be just out of the old playoff system. You probably got them too low. The real number is probably Alabama is the 4th best team in the country. That's probably the truth.
Well, Alabama did make the top 4 a year ago. Seems to be forgotten. I mean, sometimes I feel like, and it's my fault, sometimes I feel like I'm living on one planet and everybody else is living on another, but didn't Alabama make the top 4 last year? So you're one of the best 4 teams. And then you played the eventual national champion to overtime. They don't beat us in 60 minutes. Then they go on and play in the national championship game where they soundly beat their next opponent. It just seems to be completely obviously that Alabama was the second best team in the 4-team playoff. But then you read comments about last season, and we ended up ranked 5th. I mean, someone explained that to me like I'm 5. Or like I'm not a 5-year-old, but a particularly dumb 5-year-old, because I don't get any of that. We were the second best team, and we proved that by being invited to the top 4 by the experts, and then proving while we were there that we deserved it because we played the national champion to overtime in 60 minutes.
No, that's a good point.
But anyway, it's just I'd get so frustrated talking about it because I felt the same way about the year before when we were again underestimated by everyone, including our own fans. And now I feel like now they're really underestimating us. And I would say I'm enjoying it, but it also frustrates me when we actually achieve something and aren't given the credit for that achievement.
No, I hear you. I do get that. By the way, before we go to break, Alabama is going to wear retro uniforms this Saturday against Texas A&M that are fire. So I'm going to love that.
How old are we, though, when our retro uniforms are now? We're wearing retro uniforms of when me and you watched Alabama play as adults. I think I was an adult when Antoine this is the Petway team, right?
That's true. Florida. I was an adult, too. What am I talking about? I was in school. I wasn't even close to being in school. I was way out of school.
Yeah, 2004, 2005, in that range.
Retro. God, that's... So is it just me? When somebody says retro, I immediately think 1970s. That's just me, right?
Whenever I turn on a classic rock station and they're playing a song that I know every word of from my youth, I feel like God, this is like when I was a kid and a Beatles song would come on the radio, and my parents would get so excited, and I'm like, "How old are y'all?"
All right, Jimmy, when we come back, we're going to talk about the win totals, which should pretty much mirror this top 25 way too early season poll, but it may not. But of course, I'm going to talk about FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports books. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, as I just said. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and much, much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot, guy. FanDuel is official partner of the NBA and of the NFL, which just wrapped up its season yesterday. Yeah, the Super Bowl was pretty fun, but it needed to end it sooner. I was like barely hanging on watching that thing towards the end. Can't stay up
Kind
that
of
late.
late. It was late. The game took for, and the game was slow. The game took for. I'm sure it's the commercials and the halftime show and everything else. And gosh, it went on and on. But it was I wanted a close game, and that's what we got. Two excellent coaches, by the way. I don't think we talk about that enough. But Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan, outstanding coaches, sort of the state of the art.
So On3 also released this way too early win projections.
Well, I think they were from FanDuel, actually.
FanDuel, sorry.
Friend of the show, FanDuel, On3 just put them out saying, hey, this is FanDuel, and put it in a way, an easily digestible thing for readers. But the numbers themselves were set by our good friends at FanDuel.
That's right. My bad. So they have Georgia and Texas minus 10.5 wins or over under 10.5 wins. And look, again, I get it. They have Alabama at and LSU at 9.5. This is only SEC teams, by the way, and Missouri at 9.5, and Ole Miss at 9.5. Okay, that doesn't seem that. I think you got to go LSU under, Alabama over, Texas under, Georgia under. Do you?
I know this. No way all six are going over.
Yeah, I mean
that ain't gonna happen. I don't even think mathematically.
There's too much overlap, but Missouri
I don't think
definitely.
Like Georgia and Texas are both 10.5, yet they play each other. So that not one of them's at 11. Period. You're basically saying whoever loses Georgia Texas is going to run the table. If you're saying both Georgia and Texas should be over.
Well, Missouri, I mean, their 9.5 total is rather shocking to me.
Now,
honestly.
they have some schedule advantages. I think we've talked about it before. We're going to be talking about the schedule more and more as we advance toward the season. But Missouri does have a manageable schedule, and I think that's going to help them out.
But they go to Alabama.
That's a tough, no doubt.
They welcome in Oklahoma. Okay, I think they can beat Oklahoma. Sure. They go to Texas A&M. They do have Vanderbilt at home to kind of kick off the SEC season. They got Auburn at home, which isn't going to be easy. They're at South Kakalaki.
Yeah, that's losable. I think losable, but I'm also not convinced South Carolina's going to be very good.
I mean, their first 4 games are all at home, and then they go to A&M. I think I mentioned that. Look, do I think Missouri? I look at their schedule and go, I wish Alabama had their schedule. I'll tell you that.
I'll go under for Missouri, by the way, but I also think under for Missouri. I think Missouri's most likely result is 9-3. That's what I would project for Missouri today, 9-3, which means that's the under. But it's also a really good season. I mean, that's pretty good, these days.
And I'm going to tell you too, and they do avoid Georgia, they avoid LSU, and
Texas.
But
I mean, they avoid Georgia and Texas. They play Oklahoma at home.
Now, here's the thing with LSU that's interesting. I think LSU under, but mostly because I don't think they're going to beat USC and UCLA. I think they'll beat certainly one of them. Obviously, the odds on would be on beating UCLA. I don't think they'll beat both of them. And they're at South Carolina. They do play Ole Miss. They play them in Baton Rouge. They do play Alabama. They play them in Baton Rouge. But they're at Florida. They also have Oklahoma in Baton Rouge. I mean, I think you got to think they lose 2 of those 3. right? They lose Jaden Daniels. I mean, it's a big deal to lose him.
I can make a strong case for LSU being a 6-6 type team. I really can. I mean, when you factor in,
I just thought 9.5 was high for them.
Their defense was horrific last year. I mean, horrific. And the only reason that they were a good team, and they were good, they finished, I think, 13th or something, 15th, 13th, somewhere like that. So that's a good team. But the only reason they did is because their quarterback was otherworldly, and he's gone. So on that alone, you would think, well, they're 6-6. But whoa. Before people start running to the betting window at FanDuel, LSU's got dudes, and they're going to be better coached.
They got
Garrett Nussmeier's looked good to me when he has had the chance to play quarterback. To me, he's looked really good. And don't think for 1 second that LSU's going to be short on dudes. So to me, it's almost like, yeah, I can make the case that LSU's 6-6, but I'm not going to believe it. I mean, I think they're going to be too good for that. And I won't be surprised they beat USC and UCLA both. But I say that because UCLA is so –
they're a rudderless ship right now.
They're floundering.
But look at I know some people be like, how do you have under for Texas and Georgia? Well, first of all, they play each other, and they play each other at Texas. And also Georgia plays at Alabama. Georgia's got a tough schedule. So, Georgia also opens with Clemson. That's no give to me by any stretch. And they're at Ole Miss. I mentioned that earlier. And they have to play Tennessee and Auburn. That's going to be and they're at Kentucky.
Georgia could lose at Texas. Yeah. Georgia could lose. I mean, Georgia could beat Texas. So that's a loss for Texas. And then Alabama beats Georgia, and there's your loss for Georgia. That puts both of them at 11. So that means they have to win all the rest of the games to be over. So I can see under for both.
And look at Texas. Texas.
I'm going to say 11-1 for Georgia, and I think 10-2 for Texas seems right to me.
Texas is at Michigan. Now, maybe that game's a lot easier now that Michigan lost a lot of people and lost their coach. But it is easier. I mean, it's not – maybe it is. It is. But they also have to play Oklahoma. They couldn't beat Oklahoma last year. They made the playoffs and didn't beat Oklahoma last year. They have Georgia at home. They have Florida at home. Okay, yep, I think they'll win that game. But they have Kentucky at home. I think they'll win that game. At A&M to end the season, it's not going to be easy. At Arkansas, I don't think it's going to be super easy. I think they should win it. But when you factor in, you're also playing at Michigan. I sort of want to go the under on Texas too. And it sounds so homerific to be like, oh yeah, take Bama over and everybody else under. That sounds terrible. But I'm giving some justification. And I do want to look at some of these others really quickly. Missouri at 9, Ole Miss at 9.5. Boy, I'm tempted to go to say over on Ole Miss. In fact, I will say over on Ole Miss. Tennessee at 8.5. That one's intriguing.
That is intriguing. A lot of it depends on, hey, is Nico Imaliva even going to be eligible this fall with the investigation that's going on? Yeah. I mean, if he's not eligible this fall, their season looks radically different, right? As far as Alabama's number 9.5, this is why I'd stay away from it right now. I think Alabama's most likely outcome is 10-2, which means take the over. I think that's the most likely outcome. But I think the second most likely outcome isn't 11-1. It's 9-3, based on the coaching change, based on all the newness, based on Downs, Proctor, Bond, and Niblack leaving. I think 9-3 is more likely than 11-1. Although, like I said, I'm settling on 10-2. But for that reason, 9.5 kind of scares me, right? Because the second most likely outcome is 9-3. I would say the third most likely outcome is 11-1, because I think 8-4 would be truly shocking. 11-1 wouldn't be shocking. It'd be a little surprising, but 8-4 or worse, boy, it's going to be a rough fall on Locked On Bama. If,
God,
8-4 or worse.
It'll be great for us. We'll get a ton of views. People will want to hear us cry.
Well, except they'll blame us. It'll be our fault.
Oh, it'll be our fault. Well, I mean, look, you can blame us for a lot of things, not Alabama's eventual downfall.
So one thing Chris Stewart says all the time. Of course, everything is going well for Alabama basketball right now, but Chris Stewart always says, hey, when things don't go well for whatever reason, I find when I walk the streets, I hear that it's my fault.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, well, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.